Live from Washington, this is BBC News.
Excuse me, I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the way I
ridiculous.
asked it.
Chairman Jordan.
Yeah, tense clashes in Congress. Democrats accusing Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, of a lack of transparency. Lawmakers say the truth will come out. 8 people are killed in one of Canada's worst mass shootings. 6 children are among the victims. And the Dawson's Creek star, the actor James Van Der Beek, dies aged 48. Hello, I'm Carl Nasman. Welcome to the program. The survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse say that they want transparency and accountability. Their fear is that that is not happening, despite the release by the U.S. Justice Department of millions of files relating to the convicted sex offender. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, in a tense and combative hearing before U.S. lawmakers on Capitol Hill, defended her handling of the files as Democrats and some Republicans accused her of engaging in a cover-up by redacting the names of several men from the documents that have been made public. This all comes as one abuse survivor has told the BBC that the royal family's response has been too little, too late, and she wants King Charles to proactively search palace files relating to the former Prince Andrew. More on that in a moment, but first, Gary O'Donoghue has our top story from Washington.
Jeffrey Epstein's survivors have brought their fight for justice to Capitol Hill, furious that some of their details were released in the files. They say that's traumatized them all over again.
Abusers' names and contact information is redacted while our faces and stories are left on full display. This is not protection. This is betrayal.
A partial release of these files by the DOJ, riddled with improper redactions that expose the vulnerable and shield the powerful from accountability, is not justice.
Give us the rest of the files and start the investigations. Start the investigations on the things that are in the files right now.
Inside the Capitol, the Attorney General Pam Bondi was appearing before an influential committee for the first time since the release of the files.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God?
I do.
With some of the survivors in the room, one Democrat used their presence to attack the Department of Justice.
And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand.
In her opening statement, Pam Bondi had expressed sympathy for the victims, but no apology. And what about further criminal indictments?
I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me, I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the way I
ridiculous.
asked it.
You don't tell me anything.
I did tell you because that call for prosecutions by many Democrats extended to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
These 2 photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland.
Pam Bondi appeared about to answer that question, but was cut off. Mr. Mountbatten Windsor has always denied he's done anything wrong, but has not recently answered repeated calls for him to come here to answer questions.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes, this is pathetic.
The committee often descended into a shouting match, with the Attorney General launching into her political opponents.
This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law.
Members of Congress are continuing to review the unredacted files, which have now led to a number of other names of alleged conspirators being made public, and to repeated questions over why no new prosecutions are being pursued. Gary O'Donoghue, BBC News, Washington.
As Canada reels from one of the worst mass shootings in its history, police named the suspect as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar. 8 people were killed in the attacks at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School and at a private home. It happened in the westernmost province of British Columbia and the remote town of Tumbler Ridge at the foot of the Rocky Mountains there. 6 of the victims were killed at the town's secondary school. 1 died on their way to hospital. Another 2 were found in a nearby house. In all, 25 other people were injured. Police say the body of the suspected shooter was found at the school. Police say that they don't yet have a motive. Neda Taufik has the latest.
Students emerged from lockdown under police supervision after shootings in their small community of Tumbler Ridge in the northeast part of British Columbia. For hours, they sheltered inside their secondary school after an alert on Tuesday afternoon signaled something was very wrong.
And our principal goes throughout the halls and she's saying, people close your doors, lockdown, stuff like that. And we realized how serious it really was. So we all barricaded up the doors with some iron tables.
New details have emerged about the suspect. The alleged attacker has been identified as Jesse Van Rootseller by police, who say the 18-year-old was born a biological male and began to transition and identify as female 6 years ago. Police say Jesse Van Rootseller was known to them.
Police had attended that residence on multiple occasions over the past several years, dealing with concerns of mental health with respect to our suspect. I can say that on different occasions, the suspect was apprehended for assessment and follow-up. Police have attended that residence in the past, approximately a couple of years ago, where firearms were seized under the criminal code. I can say that at a later point in time, the lawful owner of those firearms petitioned for those firearms to be returned, and they were.
According to investigators, the former student of Tumbler Ridge, who dropped out 4 years ago, had a long gun and a modified handgun. Police say 2 victims were found dead at the suspect's home, her mother and stepbrother. From there, the authorities say the suspect went to the school, exchanged fire with police, and killed 6 people, a female teacher, 3 female students, and 2 male students.
To those families who have lost loved ones, this house mourns with you. To those who are recovering from injuries, this house prays for you. To the students, the teachers, the parents, every resident of Tumbler Ridge, all of Canada stands with you.
King Charles reached out to the Canadian Prime Minister personally and also shared this statement. He wrote, "We can only express our deepest possible sympathy to the families who are grieving the unimaginable loss of their loved ones." With a population of less than 3,000 people, Tumbler Ridge is set in the northeast foothills of the Rocky Mountains. This rare shooting is a profound loss for this remote, quiet area. For those who didn't get out of the school unscathed, many are now fighting for their lives. Neda Taufik, BBC News, New York.
The search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of journalist Savannah Guthrie, continues 11 days after her family reported her missing from her Arizona home. Authorities detained a person of interest in the case, but the man was released just hours later after questioning. Police are now expanding their investigation in that Tucson area there. And joining us live now from Tucson, Arizona, our correspondent David Willis. David, we had this flurry of activity, the release of photos and videos from a doorbell camera. And then it seemed like, again, this kind of went quiet. Do we know what the impact of the release of that material's been?
Well, it was the release of those images, those harrowing images, Carl, of a masked man on Nancy Guthrie's doorstep that have led to a slew of new tips for law enforcement officers to follow up. 4,000 tips within the space of 24 hours or so, we're told here. And of course, those images, harrowing as they were, showed a man masked and armed on Nancy Guthrie's doorstep, tampering with her doorbell camera just hours before Nancy Guthrie went missing. It was thought that it would be difficult to retrieve those images because the memory of the camera had been erased, but in actual fact, some very clever forensics managed to make those images come to life, and they do appear to have breathed more life into an investigation that at one stage seemed perhaps to be going nowhere. Now the focus very much appears to be still on a 4-mile radius around Nancy Guthrie's home and that of her daughter, her elder daughter, Annie. And we watched today as federal agents return to Nancy Guthrie's home, looking for clues along the roadside, both in her house and neighboring properties as well.
David, we heard there that there was a person of interest detained. Do we know anything more about that person and whether or not that was simply a dead end in the case?
It appears to have been a dead end in the case, and it was the result of one of the new tips that had come in to the tip hotlines as a result of the release of those images, Carl. There was a man detained for several hours last night for questioning in connection with the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, but he was released in the early hours of this morning, but not until a thorough investigation of his home had been carried out. Now, the local sheriff warned this morning that there could be further such instances as they pursue leads, chase down leads, some of which, of course, are bound to go nowhere.
Yeah, 11 days on now in this investigation. David Willis, thank you very much for your reporting. Well, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're live with BBC News. Job growth in the U.S. picked up last month after the weakest year for new jobs since the COVID-19 pandemic. Figures from the Department of Labor show that employers added a greater than expected 130,000 jobs in January, helping to nudge the unemployment rate down to 4.3%. It was 4.4% a month earlier. Now, the figures help ease some fears about the health of the job market after last year's sharp slowdown. Our New York business correspondent Michelle Fleury has the story.
The delayed government jobs report painted a bit of a mixed picture for the US economy. Wall Street, well, it reacted cautiously with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq all little changed as a stronger than expected January report failed to spark a sustained rally. Now, on the one hand, American employers added 130,000 jobs in January. That helped nudge the unemployment rate lower to 4.3%. That was the strongest monthly gain in more than a year, and it suggests the job market may finally be stabilising. But here's the catch. We also got major revisions to last year's numbers, and they show 2025 was much weaker than we previously thought. Instead of adding more than 500,000 jobs, the economy, well, it added just 181,000 for the entire year. That's an average of about 15,000 jobs a month, the slowest pace of hiring outside a recession in more than 2 decades. Now, the good news, healthcare is still hiring. In fact, about 60% of January's job gains came from that sector. So for those working in that field, demand remains strong. Wages are also still growing at about 3.7% year over year. That's solid and, importantly, not so strong that it's likely to worry America's central bank. And speaking of the Federal Reserve, this report likely keeps them on hold for now. No immediate pressure to cut rates, but also no sign that they need to raise them again. Most economists think we're probably now looking at least the summer before any move. So overall signs of stabilisation, but last year was far softer than we all realised.
Yeah, Michelle Fleury there. And just some developing news here. In the last hour or so, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to overturn President Trump's tariffs on Canada. That's after 6 Republicans sided with nearly all Democrats on that measure. It is largely symbolic. It would need to be passed in the Senate, and it would likely be vetoed, of course, by President Trump if it does see his desk. But potentially there a symbolic move, Republicans siding with Democrats on that legislation there in the House. Well, U.S. President Trump says nothing definitive was reached in talks with Israel's prime minister on Wednesday, adding that he insisted that negotiations with Iran continue. Benjamin Netanyahu was at the White House today to press President Trump for a deal that would not only halt Iran's uranium enrichment, but also cut its ballistic missile program and its support for groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. Posting on social media, the president wrote, "Last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal, and they were hit with midnight hammer," referring there to a U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear sites last June. Tehran says it will only consider negotiations around its nuclear program. Now, earlier on Wednesday, Mr. Netanyahu sat down with America's top diplomat Marco Rubio at the Blair House nearby, next to the White House, for the official signing on to the Gaza Board of Peace. All right, with me now in studio, Josh Letterman, Global Affairs Analyst and Fellow at the Center for International Security Studies at Princeton University, formerly a foreign correspondent at NBC News. And Josh, it was interesting during this visit today at the White House. We hardly saw, any pictures, any video of the two leaders. Pretty rare. Usually when we see Prime Minister Netanyahu arrive at the White House, it's big fanfare, media let in, lots of questions. What did you make of today's meeting?
Well, there have been 7 dates so far between President Trump and Netanyahu since Trump's second term started, and almost all of them, I think there was only one that did not have some type of public component. So the fact that this one, again, was held behind closed doors without the press being let in at all seems to suggest some daylight between the Israelis and the Americans, and that is further underscored by that statement that the president put out, which makes clear that what Prime Minister Netanyahu wanted to get out of this meeting, clearly an indication from the U.S. that it was not going to settle for a quick deal only on nuclear, is not what he got. And in fact, President Trump signaling he is very much in deal-making mode.
Yeah, how far apart do you think these two sides are right now? And I guess maybe it's also notable that Mr. Netanyahu moved this trip up, didn't he, by a couple of weeks? This was meant to be scheduled later on in February, but here he is now kind of rushing over, it seems, to talk to the president.
Yeah, there certainly seems to be a lot of concern in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem that the U.S. administration may rush ahead with a deal that will be squarely focused on nuclear and would essentially allow thousands of ballistic missiles, support for proxy groups that will continue to pose a serious threat to Israeli security. Now, you never really know if Trump and Netanyahu are playing some type of good cop, bad cop game, and you also don't know how serious President Trump might be on the other component of that statement he put out, which is to suggest that if a deal is not reached, that there could be U.S. military action. We should say President Trump, during his first administration, withdrew from the nuclear agreement that had been made with Iran. What are the chances, do you think, right now that the president could get a better deal than that one, which at the time, he was very clear he didn't like? Well, you might think that he would have more leverage now, given the fact that the U.S. and Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities not that long ago, the fact that there have been these mass protests in Iran that have really weakened the regime there. But all indications so far is that the Iranians have not softened their negotiation position at all. They are still asking for the same things that they were asking for last year and refusing to take or offer the types of concessions the U.S. seems to want. So if Trump is hoping to get a better deal than Obama got, or a better deal than he might have gotten a year or so ago, so far there are no indications that the Iranians are willing to give it to him. There were a couple of other issues, at least, that we expect might have come up during this meeting. One, of course, would be the Gaza ceasefire deal, trying to get that from phase 1 to phase 2. And then, the issues in the West Bank, Israel moving this week to essentially take a bit more control of that territory. Do you think that those did come up? Would that be a discussion that the two leaders would have? We know that heading into the meeting, both President Trump and the Israelis said that those would be discussed. So I think it's likely that they did. There are some sticking points over the Gaza deal, over which countries participate in this board of peace, and over what exactly it means for Hamas to disarm. But we know that these are all kind of intertwined right now because of the political context in Israel, with Prime Minister Netanyahu facing an election campaign and of course the blame game still raging from who was to blame for the security failures on October 7th.
You know, we also heard there Israel officially joining the Board of Peace. That was before today's meeting. How significant is that, and are we clear at this point of exactly, even what this Board of Peace might do when it comes to the Gaza Strip, for example?
I think it was fairly obvious that Israel was going to have to get on board with this international effort that now has been blessed by the UN Security Council. What exactly it's going to look like, we still don't know. And in fact, the recent indications from the U.S. that they want to expand this to even be broader than just the Gaza Strip, to kind of be a worldwide effort, I think has a lot of countries in the region concerned about what exactly they may have signed up for.
And looking ahead, Josh, we heard the president again kind of threatening more military assets moving into the region. Do we have a sense yet of which direction the administration might go when it comes to any potential military action there in Iran?
Well, there certainly have been major sunk costs in the U.S. already, in that this is one of the biggest military buildups that we've seen in the region in decades. And the president, frankly, has more credibility when he makes that threat because of what we saw in Venezuela. Very similar choreography. You build up this massive threat in the region, put all your forces there, and then say, look, you either make a deal with us or you're going to regret it. That seems to be the playbook that the president is playing by now. Whether or not he would even go through with that on Iran, a far more militarized country with a lot more ability than the Venezuelans, we don't know, but certainly the threat has more credibility than it would have just a few months ago.
All right. Josh Letterman, Global Affairs Analyst and Fellow at the Center for International Security Studies there at Princeton University. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, the Trump administration has blamed a Mexican cartel drone incursion for the temporary closure of the airspace over El Paso International Airport in Texas. The measure was initially ordered for 10 days for special security reasons, but was lifted within hours. The Transport Secretary Sean Duffy said that swift action was taken to disable the drone. Mexico's president says authorities are investigating the incident. El Paso's mayor slammed the closure, saying that it caused widespread disruption and confusion.
I want to be very, very clear that this should have never happened. You cannot restrict airspace over a major city without coordinating with the city, the airport, the hospitals, the community leadership. That failure to communicate is unacceptable.
The actor James Van Der Beek, best known for his starring role in the U.S. teen drama Dawson's Creek, has died aged 48 after a battle with stage 3 bowel cancer. The father of 6 starred in multiple popular shows and films in the late 1990s and early 2000s, including the cult classic Dawson's Creek and the film Varsity Blues. Earlier, I spoke to Emily Longeretta, director of features at Variety, and she told us more about his career and the role that made him a star.
Absolutely. I mean, same with me, a show that sticks with me forever. So, of course, James Van Der Beek is best known for playing Dawson Leary, and the show was built around him. And the creator, Kevin Williamson, has said many times, he wanted to tell the story of his life, and Dawson was based on him. And he had to find the right person to do that. And James immediately stepped into that role and broke through and became such a mainstay on so many TVs and so many living rooms around the world. He took this character that was not, a jock, was not the cool kid in high school, and made him lovable and this filmmaker and someone that people fell in love with, and that was not afraid to be emotional, something that a lot of men on TV, especially young men on TV, it's frowned upon. And James Van Der Beek was able to do that with such eloquence, and his emotion and connection and authenticity really came through the screen as Dawson and really catapulted his career. Instead of just being a 90s heartthrob, he ended up going on to do many, many TV shows and films. And he became, one of the mainstays of the entertainment world, and something that is why this passing is so devastating for so many.
Yeah, this was one of those ones where when that news is announced, you hear people in the newsroom kind of audibly gasping. And of course, he was young, 48 years old. Tell us about what was in many ways, I think, a public battle with cancer.
Absolutely. So he was diagnosed in 2023, and he announced it. He revealed it in the following year in a People magazine cover story, and explained, that for the last year he'd been trying to figure out what he wanted to do with treatments and trying to figure out how to deal with this. And of course, with 6 children and a wife and a close-knit community in Austin, Texas. He really started leaning on his family and really became open about it. He's talked a bit about how his mindset shifted after that diagnosis, and how one of the weird things he said was that this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the reason he says that is because the diagnosis changed his life in a way that he looked at things. He realized, to live life more slowly and to soak in moments with his family and his friends even more and focus on the things that really mattered instead of the things that maybe look like they matter from the outside. So for the last 3 years, he had been battling this cancer, and he had been raising awareness, but also trying to raise money for his family as well as for a cancer foundation through a Dawson's Creek reunion that they did in New York. And then he was, donating, or he was auctioning off some of his items from Dawson's Creek and from Varsity Blues for fans to also help with the costs.
We have about a minute left here, but, obviously a famous actor. How do you think, though, he'll be remembered as a person?
I think most of all, he'll be remembered for his kindness. I mean, that's what most people have been saying who have known him. I was honored to have met him a few times and couldn't say anything but great things. One of the main things I think about is the last panel he did in public, which was with the creator of the show, Kevin Williamson, to honor him. And even though this was a couple months ago, and even though James was not well, he still showed up to honor this man who gave him his career. And I think that's the most important thing to show, is the kindness and caring about other people, and ultimately just loving his wife and kids more than anything and wanting to create the best life for them.
The actor James Van Der Beek has died at 48.
Hello there. It looks like we are going to see a change in the weather over the next few days. And whilst we've got some wet conditions around again on Thursday, it will be turning colder from the north and across northern Scotland. There may be some sunshine. Still be a few wintry showers here perhaps, and a cold easterly wind will bring cloud, rain, sleet and hill snow for the rest of Scotland into the far north of England. It's rain in Northern Ireland, quite a wet day. Some of that rain pushes into England and Wales. As it clears away from South Wales and southwest England, we get some sunshine. Temperatures could get into double figures for the far south of the UK, but they are continuing to fall away elsewhere. And the colder air continues to move down from the north. That's going to follow the wetter weather that will head its way southwards. But as that colder air digs in, we've got a different sort of hazard really on Thursday night and into Friday for Scotland and northern England, with some snow and some icy conditions developing as well. There may eventually be some sunshine on Friday across Northern Ireland. We'll have some sunshine in Scotland, some snow showers as well. Those will push into northern England as the overnight rain, sleet and snow moves down into the Midlands across into Wales. Quite windy conditions across much of England and Wales. That's just going to make it feel colder. Temperatures are continuing to fall away, and for most of us 4 or 5 degrees. And with clearing skies overnight, we start the weekend with a widespread frost. Saturday looks dry and sunny before we see some rain, sleet and snow pushing eastwards Saturday night and into Sunday morning.
Artificial intelligence at the front line of healthcare. We'll introduce you to a doctor and cancer survivor whose AI model is already predicting breast cancer risk years in advance. Is AI about to change medicine forever? That's AI Decoded here on BBC News.
We're taking a look at the Epstein files and how they're being covered by journalists.
We'll hear from a journalist who's been working around the clock to sift through all of those files, and to an editor who first exposed Jeffrey Epstein over 15 years ago.
It's all on The Media Show on BBC News.
The Winter Olympics are taking place here in Italy. Nearly 3,000 athletes from around the world are flocking to the mountains and hoping for glory. So who will be grabbing the medals and the headlines? Join us on BBC News, or you can follow all the latest online or via the BBC Sport app.
I promise this isn't how I drive.
Action. The director can come over to me and say, hey, I just want to add a little jerk here or an extra bump there, and in a few clicks of a button I can do that.
This is the forefront of the technology. Why do we want a cell phone network on the moon? There are no people there. There are no people yet.
What's in my hands are tiny, lab-grown brains. This is what everybody wants to get their hands on.
Oh, I've dropped it. This is a really significant change in the game.
What have you found already?
10 billion new genes.
There are currently tens of thousands of untreatable diseases with existing tools. We think we can make a dent in that.
This revolutionized all electronics.
Technology like this is part of what will accelerate the capabilities of the future.
We're developing and commercializing space-based solar power.
We expect to have biocomputers consume hundreds times less energy.
We're part of something really major here that's never been done in video games.
Tech Now. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Global business news from the boardroom or grassroots. BBC News cuts through the jargon to add colour, depth and context. With live reaction from Wall Street and Asia, studio interviews with top CEOs and the latest innovations in technology. Talking Business.
Hello and welcome to Talking Business. Here's what's on the programme this week. President Trump doubles down in his battle against the green energy transition, with wind power taking the brunt.